If you do all of those things, I think you can be whoever the fuck you want to be in like 18 months. Hey guys, welcome back to Be the Standard. Today we have a very special guest in Sandra Gonzalez. Sandra is a retired Marine Corps officer with 20 plus years of service. She currently is an executive coach and speaker with a variety, I noticed, of certifications in this area. You own your own company, was Sandra Gonzalez Enterprises, with a heavy focus again on coaching entrepreneurs into successful leaders. So, Sandra, great to have you.
Great. It's an honor to be here, Danny. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, and one thing that I left out I think is very important is obviously family. You have two daughters. One of them is also in the Marines and both currently in college.
Well, actually, my oldest is a Marine veteran. She got out
Okay.
already, and
Okay.
she just graduated from the University of Wilmington, got her degree in psychology, is engaged to a badass Marine. And I'm a happy mom, Danny, where
That's
my
awesome.
youngest is a junior here at UCSD here in San Diego.
Great. That's awesome. And one thing I do want to point out, I don't think, maybe you'll care, maybe you won't, but for me, it's awesome because you're actually our first female guest. Yeah. And I just, I've been following you on LinkedIn for some time now, watching your content, seeing the things that you're putting out there and the work that you're doing. And I think it's great. And so I actually think it's just incredible for you to be our first female guest. And it's just really, really cool to have you. So thank you for coming on. I not first came across you, but shortly after coming across you and following you on LinkedIn, I saw you on the Harder, Not Smarter podcast with a couple of friends of mine, Kevin Seif and Greg Van Dyne. And I've actually been fortunate enough as well to be a guest on their show. So listening to your episode is really where I kind of garnered that interest in, like, wow, it'd be great to have her on, just in how you present yourself, the way you speak, and obviously, again, the things that you're doing. But I kind of want to start with, you're a Marine Corps veteran. I kind of want to start with what did you do in the Marines? I know you were 20 plus years of service. What was your job there?
Oh my goodness, yes. Well, when you're in the Marine Corps that long or in the military, what don't you do, right, Denny?
Sure.
I started out enlisted. And I was a Marine Corps drill instructor. And then right after being a drill instructor, I decided that I wanted to go the officer route. And it's always important, whether you're in the military, you're in corporate, in any organization, it's always important to challenge ourselves, not get complacent. It's one of the things that I'm passionate about, like screw mediocrity. And it's, I hate to say it, but most Americans, or even on a global scale, because I've had the honor of coaching women abroad, I've seen how complacent people have gotten. So that's where that whole, screw mediocrity, like go from, and this is where I'm passionate about helping leaders go from excellent to extraordinary. Like always push the envelope. I'll always be, be greater, never settle. So when I became an officer, it was stepping into uncertainty. And I learned so much in the Marine Corps. I just, it has its ups and downs, like anything else. But the wealth of experience, information, leadership that I was able to take away when I eventually retired, I realized, what? I do have these incredible, valuable skill sets that will help me transition from my military career now as an entrepreneur. And it's one of the things that I share often with military men and women is you have valuable skill sets that are applicable to your new position, whatever that might be, and leadership. Leadership is a choice. Leadership is not a position, it's a choice. So wherever you are, the onus is on you as a leader to step up. So yeah, I mean, the Marine Corps, what didn't I do? But it was an incredible journey, so grateful. I i you know i credit to most of my leadership skills to my first boss. My first boss was at the time Colonel James N. Mattis, who later became a general, later became the 26th U.S. Secretary of Defense. But this man was something else.
Yeah.
He was a scholar, he was a gentleman, he was this he was a lethal weapon. He is a lethal weapon. And so I was able to extract whatever he taught me and incorporate that into my leadership skills so I could lead men and women.
Yeah, that's incredible. That's something I didn't know about you, is that you had the good fortune just to be able to work under him and to learn from him. He's somebody that I personally just have a great deal of respect and admiration for. So to be able to work under that caliber of talent and leadership is just like, wow. And I like the way you talked about leadership there, right? Like, because you choose to be a leader, and I was asked on a podcast just last week, about what makes a good leader, and I was asked to kind of describe that. And one of the things, or the thing that I said was basically the biggest thing was accountability, obviously, and then also, you give your team the credit when they perform well and things are going right. But when things aren't, it's on you to accept responsibility. So there's a fine line there, and I think that the influence, especially in the military, I feel like you have so much influence over people when you're in those positions, and it's not just a position; it really is so much more than that. So it was refreshing to hear you speak of it that way, and again to be able to learn from somebody like that is just. What was that like? I mean, beyond what you said.
Yes, Danny. So I was that PFC that would go into his office and I would clean his office. And even though I was like naive, I was 18 years old. People don't believe it. Like, they're like, you were part of 7th Marine Regiment? What? Females are part of that? I'm like, yes, I'm old school. When I checked in, I'll never forget, like, the staff sergeant was pissed the hell off because here's a little Latina PFC checking in. And he's like, I could tell immediately with the expression on his face, he was pissed. He's like, we're expecting a male. Ponce. Well, Staff Sergeant, me, and that was my first introduction into the Marine Corps. Like, oh shoot, this isn't good. But I knew, Denny, as a woman, that I had to work 3 times, 4 times as harder than my male counterparts, just because of, I'm a woman, and I've had to develop the physical, the physical prowess, so to speak, to be competitive, and if not, learn how to lead men and women of that caliber. So it's always constantly, strengthening my brain and my body, which is one of the things that General Mattis taught me.
Yeah, and it's you want to believe, right, that things are just really equal in the military, and women maybe don't have to work as hard, but the reality is that it is a very alpha male dominated culture. So you really don't see that level of, I don't want to say performance, but you do see females maybe have to struggle in certain areas, and especially I think in certain MOSs where it might be more difficult to come up and get those opportunities if you are a female.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And there is, as much as, women, we're equals. I mean, we're definitely equals, but the truth is this, that men and women are built differently, and we just have to honor that and respect that. And that's another thing too, Denny, not to get sidetracked, but one of the things that I realized was uh, that I used to think my masculinity was my superpower because I grew up around these tough men. You could smell the testosterone in the room, and I learned to, okay, I have to be assertive. I have to work harder if I want to earn their respect. I have to be more competitive. So I learned to challenge myself in that aspect. But I say this because it wasn't, and I talk about God because the spiritual component is very important, especially when it comes to leadership, as you already know, Denny. So I know God gave me girls because I was a tomboy growing up, so God gave me girls to really understand how to be more feminine, how to really, and it wasn't until I went through through adversity, like a difficult divorce, financial debt. I lost my father 3 years ago. It's not until you go through some type of adversity, which is a commonality, as you know, in the military, that I realized, at least for me, my femininity was my superpower, my ability to tap into my femininity. And that's also part of leadership, my ability to take a step back. And this is what I share with leaders nowadays. Like, everything's changed. You have 2 kids, Danny. How many?
I
You
don't
said,
no, I don't have any children.
oh, okay.
No.
I'm sorry. I could have sworn you had 2 kids. So
No, so you might see pictures of nieces, nephews, things like that, because I am very
beautiful.
family oriented, right? But
Good.
no children myself yet,
Well,
hopefully.
enjoy.
Yeah. The problem is I'm 41 and I still might want children, so I'm not getting any younger. So we'll see how this goes.
Yes. Well, I was a young, Lance Corporal. I had my oldest, and she was born in Okinawa, Japan, when I was stationed in Okinawa, Japan. So I was that young Marine that had a family young, had her
Yeah,
kids young, and now I'm grateful because thankfully my girls are independently successful. They're driven, they're ambitious, and I'm really proud of the women that they've become. But going back to my story,
sure.
um, femininity and masculinity, it's knowing how to combine the two so that it serves so that it serves us. And that's another thing I learned from General Mattis. I'm like, this guy is calm. And it's one of the
Mm,
things I teach leaders is how to cultivate sexy confidence, which is this high performance attitude. It's a state of mind that enables us to master ourselves so we can stay calm during stressful challenges and situations. And General Mattis exuded sexy confidence. And it was so, like, I was like, oh my goodness, how does this guy stay calm? How does he, how's he confident in himself? So it was through his example, and that I also realized leadership is caught, not taught. And
mhm.
he was just a phenomenal leader that I had the honor of serving. I was blessed to have him as a boss.
Yeah, that's awesome. And one of those things, like I talk about often, right? And for me, I struggled for the longest time just being able to. I don't call it femininity. I do call it masculinity, but I kind of refer to masculinity and then just being able to tap into those softer emotions, right? And particularly after coming home from overseas, I struggled with that for 10, 12 years, right? It was probably been the last 2-ish years where I've really felt like I've found that balance of, you know, I'm still this, rugged, tougher guy, but I also, I need to be capable of showing those softer, more vulnerable
Mm,
emotions to the people around me, especially the people that are closest to me. And it was just a very hard lesson to learn over a number of years of just feeling like I had to just stay that alpha male, that tough, like strongest guy in the room, loudest guy in the room, most confident guy in the room, right? And now it feels like almost just this weight's been lifted off, where I don't feel like I need to be that guy. I feel like I can be kind, soft, generous, gentle, and still have that ability and that capability to be that guy that I used to be if I need to be,
That's
right?
beautiful, Denny. If
Yeah.
I may ask,
Yeah,
what
sure.
made you what like triggered you? What made you realize that
I think just over a number of years, I think it just finally maybe just caught up to me where I was like, Jesus, like maybe I just got sick and tired of it. I know my marriage, going through a divorce was a part of it, and just being that guy for so long and not really letting that guy go for so long. I know that played somewhat of a part. So there's that, but then it just felt like it was time to drop it. It was just time to. It's hard for me to really explain. It was just I maybe just got tired of being that guy and just was like, let me try uh, being more vulnerable. Let me try being just this softer, gentler person. Um, and I gotten a lot of feedback from the people closest to me that it's been a positive change, and so I know it's worked. And um, it's been like almost life altering, right? And especially up here, and it's been awesome. So, but it's just to find that balance finally of knowing that I don't need to be that guy or present myself that way. I'm still that guy if I need to be, but it doesn't need to be constant, you know. And so I,
yes,
I learned to let that go.
that's beautiful, Danny. That's admirable and very vulnerable of you to share. But it's needed, and
Yeah.
those are the transformational changes that help us step into a better version of ourselves. And slowly, with time, your lens changes. You see a different version of yourself, and now you're calmer, you're wiser. You realize, no, I'm not going to be triggered like the way I was triggered before. I'm a better person now. But this does require vigilant for us to be vigilant, so we don't go back to that default state.
Yeah, and I got to credit, I had a VA counselor and he was just so helpful in that regard, because he kind of went through it himself. He was a vet, Iraq vet, went to Iraq a couple times, and kind of had a similar situation with himself where he came back and was just couldn't, get out of that hypervigilant state and that mindset of, and he was a Marine actually too, that mindset of just being, in control or in charge and just tough and rugged and like, and it does take time for us to, kind of let all that go. But for me, it just took way too long. But yeah, it's nice to look, like you said, you look at that version of yourself and you can recognize it, being smarter and wiser and, less reactive. That's why I found that I've been just, made probably the biggest change is I'm less reactive. And I'm just more chill and just kind of go with the flow, right? I'm
Yes.
I'm still
Yeah.
me, and I can get hot from time to time, but it's just not it's just not who I am anymore. It's just something that can happen from from time to time, as opposed to just a blatant characteristic, I guess. But
Yeah.
one of the things, though, I do want to touch upon, because you did spend so much time in the military and you did work for, uh, probably, in my opinion, the greatest general we've ever had. Um, did you during your transition out of the military, did you have any struggles? And I know I had this issue. I know some other people that we know have had this issue with, struggling with our identity and, what's next
Mhm.
for me, and the fear of kind of the unknown and some uncertainty.
Yes, yes. I was just talking to a Marine, I think day before yesterday, who's getting out of the Marine Corps here in a couple of months, and he reached out to me, And he was like, Sandra, I'm doing this. I'm stuck. Can you help me? I'm like, fellow Marine, anybody who served in our country. I'm like, absolutely. Let's jump on a Zoom call. Let me give you more clarity so you can spark that momentum you need and be off to the races, you know? So to answer your question, Danny, everybody experiences that fear of the uncertainty, like what's next, or how do I make that transition from being after being 5 years, 6 years, 20 years in the military, and now I got to start something new. And a lot of men and women, unfortunately, do find themselves, frustrated. Some of them actually, I have to be direct, but they find themselves depressed because they can't let go of this identity. And it's natural. This has been your identity for so long, but this is my humble recommendation. This is where we must shift our perspective. Now it's learning to close one door and open another. And when you shift your perspective, you gotta focus on the cure, not the disease. So you gotta see things differently. Be open to, oh my goodness, this is a new adventure. How exciting. How can I take the things that I learned in the military and now incorporate them into something new that I want to do? And so this Marine, that's getting ready to retire here shortly, I asked him a couple of questions that gave him that clarity that he needed. And, just simple questions that they pretty much come to their own conclusions. They generate their own solutions. And I'm like, see, you have clarity. You just needed a little help. So, of course, I love helping military men and women because they've served our country. And nothing better than a man or woman who served our country, who gave of themselves, unselfish individuals. And these individuals, if you ask me, and I know you also, can attest to this, Danny, is these are the men and women that are better able to lead our country. And I don't know if you just found out, but, I guess, former President Bush, the VP is like a former Marine. The gentleman he designated as vice president is like this former Marine. I'm like, yes, this is what I'm talking about. So again, this country needs us, whether it's in corporate America, whether it's being an entrepreneur, or just moving on to a new endeavor. This country needs men and women of our caliber.
Yeah, I love that you said that, because that was kind of lead me into where I was going to go next, right? Because I think that so many of the skills and the things that you learn in the military, they don't necessarily show up on a resume, but they're so valuable. And you talk about it in your one of the sheets that I got going through your background and whatnot, all of those intangibles, right? The things that, don't present themselves on a resume, but are just so incredibly valuable. I was going to ask you to kind of touch upon that and kind of ask about, some of the skill sets and things that you learned in the Marines that now translate into, Sandra Gonzalez Enterprises.
Well, there's so many intangibles that, I mean, we could be here all day, but
Sure.
It comes down to setting that example, Denny. I'll keep it basic. It's setting that example, not only at home, but, in the workplace. Every day we need to set the example. How? By what we learned in the military, holding ourselves accountable. And men and women that have served in the military understand what that means, to hold ourselves accountable, to get up at zero dark 30, to go for a physical training session or what have you, or hold, small unit leadership, hold your Marines accountable, and teach them something basic. But it comes down to always setting that example. And why do I say this? Because the most important intangible quality we can develop, Danny, is our character. So you've already developed this character in the military. Now, all you're going to do is, be a little bit more innovative, because leadership's changed. It's not about barking orders, or being this badass leader who's always, it's like this scary guy or gal, it's not about that. It's about really trusting, connecting, being humble, being genuine, and being of service. So, stewardship. It comes down to the stewardship mindset.
Yeah, I like that. And one of the things I remember hearing in the military and that really stuck with me was, the signs of a good leader are, not like it's what you teach. Like you said, it's not about barking orders. It's not about being a badass. It's about what are you teaching? How are you grooming these people to be better? And probably the greatest sign of that, the greatest indicator of that would be, the fast track or the pace of their career. How fast are they getting promoted? If you're teaching them to be, disciplined and have accountability and, do all the right things, they're probably moving through, at a faster pace than their peers. I can say that I was fortunate enough to do that after I really dedicated myself to being in the military. My career took off, and, within a 2-year period, it was just like, wow. I ended up being the only team leader in my platoon that had never deployed before, and here I am leading guys in combat. So, that's how I always looked at leadership was, what am I teaching them? What values am I instilling? And then also, how are things looking for them on their career, and how am I guiding their career so that they can go to the next level? If their career looks like, or if it looks like they want to progress, right? And, I'm proud to say that, shortly after we got back from overseas and I led those guys, they made sergeant their first time around and they did quite well. So that to me is what the success looks like as a leader, especially in the military.
Yes.
But I'll say, I've worked in the corporate structure now for about 8 years, working for some of the largest companies out there, like Oracle. I was at Oracle for 6.5 years. I was at Workday for a bit. So, a couple of very large software companies. And, I can tell you that I think more of those entities need people like you because their leadership is just, I don't want to be too mean or anything, but they're really lacking, in my opinion. For the most part, I've seen a few solid leaders, in that space. But, overall, just generally speaking, you get a guy that comes from the military, you put them in the corporate structure. I think, they also make great leaders in that environment as well. But I think, like you said, I think they need us. And I'd like you to kind of speak to that, through your experience. I know you work with entrepreneurs and CEOs. And so I'd like to kind of transition and pivot to that, just given your experience in what you're doing now.
And what a great question, Denny, because that's why I do what I do. I'm passionate about, creating high caliber leaders, because I know there's a shortage of them out there, and because of where we are, we're just there's so much distraction out there. There's so much chaos that unfortunately a lot of people get calloused along the way, or they give up, and that's where I realized, what? And this goes back to when I was in the Marine Corps. And to answer your first question, which I knew I wanted to become an entrepreneur, like 3 years before I retired. I was actually on the Home Shopping Network, live television, promoting like an international fitness model's DVDs. But it was in that moment that I was sharing her products that I realized, if this woman created her brand, so can I. What would that mean? I had no idea. I just knew I wanted to be. I had no idea. I just knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I knew that
Yep.
I wanted freedom. I wanted the flexibility to do whatever the heck I wanted with my time. So, not to backtrack here with my long answer, right? But after going through all of that, I realized I'm going to be an entrepreneur. So what do I do now? Well, I realize I'm like, I'm not here to take out people. I know that's what I needed to do in the Marine Corps. I was fortunate enough. I can't sit here and say, I have like, I went to combat. I did, I don't have that under my belt. Um, but I do have a wealth of experience as it relates to these intangible qualities, that make leaders great leaders. And it comes down to developing, a high caliber their character.
Mm-hmm.
So so that's where I realize I'm like, life is giving us, Denny, cues. Life is dropping subtle hints. The onus is on us to really listen and extract the good, leave the bad, and take it with us. So that's how I created my brand, my business. I'm like, I know what it takes to create leaders. I love leadership and this is what they need. So that's how I created my business. But I bring this up because I've also experienced how not only parenting has changed, but leadership has changed. And adaptability is the name of the game. And, going back to whomever is watching and listening, leadership is a choice. Every day we have to be intentional with, who am I? What do I stand for? What example do I want to give not only my family, but my sphere of influence? The men and women I lead, the men and women I coach, the men and women I speak to if I'm at a conference or what have you, or, this amazing podcast. But it comes down to strengthening our character.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I love that, and that's when I decided to do this podcast. Right, it was basically a few years ago I went through a hard time, and it was time for me to really reassess my own character, and kind of getting back on track to being the guy that I really felt like I was, and who I used to be. And so I can remember just sitting there thinking like something things need to change. Just me, and I need to just rebrand myself, who I am, rebuild my character. And the way I went about doing that is just kind of putting a process in place. And I've now just kind of used those things as the key foundations of this podcast, which is setting standards, creating habits, executing, and then accountability. And accountability is something that you hammered at earlier, probably a few minutes back, about leadership and holding your people accountable, holding yourself accountable, and but just going back to character and how important it is to really be working on that, because I do think that it's something that if you're not honing in on that and almost keeping that sharp, it almost as if it's a skill set, then you can fall out of line with who you are, and almost essentially have like a crisis of character, and kind of again just fall out of alignment with who you are, and kind of end up in a position where I was, where it's time to get back to that guy and make some significant changes.
Yes, yes. So good, Danny. And, and this is why I always say adversity is our advantage, because, it's through adversity that it can either catapult you forward or it will crush you. And you want to, be that warrior, so to speak, and extract the valuable lessons, add them to your tool belt and bounce back, be resilient. We're the men and women of this amazing country. We're freaking warriors for a reason, and we need to uphold our country And, through our example, what's the best way? Through our example. We have to practice what we preach. We have to be that example for others. And unfortunately, because of technology, because of now it's so easy, I mean, I hate to say it, but most men and women that do retire, and it's like, I'm like, oh my goodness, dude, you totally let yourself go, and I'm like, somebody comes to mind. Obviously, I'm not going to say who. That's disrespectful, but like men and women that I served with, I'm like, dude, I know you, it's like you have to care about yourself for the rest of your life, and hold yourself to that higher standard. And because now it's a stepping stone. Now you're stepping into a new realm, and this new realm is going to require a new identity. That's it. You're just being more innovative, you're learning new skill sets. Have fun creating a better version of yourself, and this comes through due diligence on a daily basis.
Yeah, for sure. And it's interesting and refreshing to hear you talk about, it's unfortunate when, people as they get older, they retire or whatever it is, they let themselves go, almost as if it's like, okay, I can do that. I can stop, with these disciplines. I can stop with these habits. I can stop with holding myself accountable. And it's funny because I've had people say to me like, Denny, you're not in the military anymore. You're not, whatever, you're 41, like, why do you feel the need to, be in shape and work out? And, and it's funny because I don't know if it's just me or if it's in my head or whatever, but part of the reason I stay in shape and look a certain way is because I don't want somebody to look at me and be like, oh, you're a veteran? You used to serve? I want them to look at me and be like, I can tell he served. I can tell that he was capable. I can tell that he probably is still capable. And that's important to me, right? I don't want anybody to ever look at me and question, like, because maybe I don't want to sound a certain way, but I've done that. I've been like, oh man, this guy served. He's kind of let himself go. And
No, yes.
I hate seeing it though. It's sad to me because I know at one point that guy, girl, whatever,
Yeah.
was in great shape at one point, and they were really performing at a high level. And it makes me sad because something obviously happened, something went astray, and now they're
Right.
obviously not functioning in that same capacity. And I don't like to see that.
Yeah, and I get it, to each his own, whatever makes them happy. I totally get it. But I know what you mean as far as I used to be overweight. After my second kid, I was overweight, and I was fortunate enough where the Marine Corps had these standards, and then I was an officer, and I'm like, oh, how freaking embarrassing! I can't put on my mess dress or my uniform, so right after, I had problems losing weight, and that's why, for me at least, it was so important to understand um how to really sculpt my physique, not only for the energy, but I wanted the energy, the enthusiasm, uh and I learned through the development of my body that, oh my goodness, you really have to build muscle. You have to build a strong body. And the way to do it is through strength training, and there's this amazing Dr. Gabrielle Lyon. She's actually married to a Navy SEAL, I believe. He's in the Navy, but she talks about muscle, and building muscle, which is the like it's the best organ we can develop, you know building muscle equates to longevity. And I'm like, oh my God, I totally get it. I'm so grateful that I started back in the day to slowly understand how to sculpt my physique, how to build my biceps, how to build the stamina that I needed to not only, maintain my family, Denny, but I had my Marines. So, at the time I was married, it wasn't easy trying to be a perfect wife and, a good mom to my girls, but then also be great example of a Marine officer for my Marines that I was leading, it was a lot. So another thing I learned was, what you learned, Danny, these time management skills and finding equilibrium, because there is no such thing as work-life balance. You have to find equilibrium that works for you. And I was grateful enough that I found it, where I was able to focus on my self-care practices. And this goes back to, you have to work on yourself first and foremost. You have to learn how to lead yourself before you can lead other people. So I'm with you, Denny. We have,
Yeah. Yeah. And in the spirit of, obviously full transparency, I mean, I had when I got back from Afghanistan, I had 2 shoulder surgeries and, I got pretty overweight myself. I got very much out of shape and eventually just looked in the mirror and was like, oh, Jesus, like, okay, you had your surgery excuse. It's time to cut the shit and get back to work. So I did that. And yeah, I feel fortunate that I had leadership in the military at a young age, early 20s, to tell me like just how important it was, like you said, to build that muscle and that bone density, because over time, that goes away just with age. So the more of it you have now and can maintain, the better off you're going to be, going through, life, essentially as we age. So great point there. And I actually called it out on one of our episodes a few back, where we talked about fitness or health and fitness. And I saw a scan of the bone density of a 70-year-old man and a 41 or 43-year-old man. And, the 70-year-old man had been working out for years. And the 41-year-old man had stopped working out 13 years ago, whatever it was. And the guy in his 70s had greater bone density and more muscle mass than the 40-year-old. And it's just, that like hit me. And I was like, oh, wow, I didn't even think, that would even be possible. But yeah, the science is there. And, we just need to convince more people to kind of buy into it.
Absolutely. And how do we do that, Denny? It's like we just have to set that example. We're not here to convince people. At least I know in my business, I'm not here to convince people. The best way to show them is actually by setting that example, like you practicing what you preach. And the whole fitness, having this physical, for me, it's like, man, how can I get more physical prowess? How can I be, if not as competitive or, more competitive than my male counterparts? So for me, that really helped me push the envelope, because male, and female Marines are so very competitive. But I'm grateful I fell in love with learning to not give up, not tap out. And I'm like, okay, I'm Latina, but doesn't mean I'm going to be thick for the rest of my life. I have to change I got to let go of these freaking burritos, So it's like I had to change my nutritional component. And so I learned how to make healthier tacos, food that would satiate my palate. So it's slow progress in the right direction, but you have to, another thing that's very important, I think, Denny, is develop a growth mindset.
Yeah, that's something we're definitely heavy on here. My partner Mike couldn't make it tonight, but he's big on that as well, as that growth mindset and always challenging yourself. And one of the other things we really talk about is rejecting that kind of victim mentality when things do go sideways for you, and understanding that, hey, listen, what's done is done. You can't control it, but what you can control is kind of your actions moving forward. And that's a big message of ours. But one of the things that I wanted to touch upon with you is because I know you do a lot of speaking, and you've spoken in Dubai, you've spoken in Mexico, you spoke, in all these places, and you speak to entrepreneurs, you speak to CEOs. What's the biggest challenge, and because I hear a lot of people who speak publicly and do it, even that people who do it often, say, I don't really like it. So I'm curious to hear, your perspective on it, whether or not you actually enjoy it, whether or not because I know you coach on it as well, kind of teaching people to gain that confidence to speak.
Yes.
And one of the reasons, just for transparency, that I'm kind of tapping into this, I'm giving my first, paid speaking, whatever, my first engagement coming up in the fall. And so, I'm curious to know your thoughts on this, and I might have to hire you to do it.
I'm here for you, brother. I'm here for you. So you're gonna take command of that room and magnetize opportunities for impact and growth. That's what you're gonna do. You're gonna. I'm getting excited just thinking about it. But to answer your question, that's another thing that I was blessed enough to experience while I was in the Marine Corps. When I was on the Home Shopping Network, and I mentioned about this international fitness model that I was a part of, promoting her DVDs. Well, she invited me to be part of her worldwide conference in Miami, Florida. And that's the first time I spoke to, women from all over the world at this conference. It was at that conference I realized, oh, I need to be a speaker. This is powerful. So, how we communicate, the things we say, the words we choose, right? And I wrote a post about this a couple days ago. Words pack a punch. The words you choose, again, can influence people to take action. The words you choose can influence people to do business with you. The words you choose can get your kids to take action immediately. So words are powerful. They pack a punch. But you got to, again, learn to connect with people, be authentic. That's another thing. Be authentic and really learn how to magnetize opportunities for impact and growth. So I'm freaking excited for you, Denny. Oh my goodness. This is wonderful. So from that experience, I did learn it's scary. That's part of, emotions are a part of what makes us human beings. This is beautiful. So another thing we have to learn is how to channel those emotions of, oh shoot, this dude just betrayed me. I want to take him out, but no, I got to keep my composure. I got to stay calm. I got to close that door, open up another one. So emotions are beautiful things. And if you can channel those emotions when you take command of any room, you're going to attract more opportunities for impact and growth. So I learned it's like, what an honor. What a great opportunity to inspire the masses. And when you connect to your authentic self, Danny, this is powerful. This is magnetic because people want to do business with Denny, the authentic Denny. And that's another thing I realized. I'm like, I'm Latina. I'm from South San Diego. Yes, I'm a Marine, retired Marine officer, but I'm passionate. I'm driven. I believe in screw freaking mediocrity. I believe in, taking it up a notch. I believe in, every year becoming the best version of myself. So I'm here for you, brother. I'm so excited that you're
Yeah.
going to take command.
Yeah, no, I'll be honest. I mean, I think people that are in a position like this, like yourself, myself, where, we're in a position of, where we're helping people, we're influencing people, we're motivating people. I think we also like to be motivated. And, hearing you speak the way you
Yes.
just were and kind of hyping me up, I'm ready to go. I think I might have to call you the day before or the morning of, for a little pep
Done.
talk.
Done,
Um,
brother.
but you're awesome. And like I said earlier, the whole foundation of this podcast is those four principles of setting standards, creating habits, executing, and holding yourself accountable. And when you say things like, screw mediocrity,
Yeah.
it really just, that encompasses everything that we're about. And I just, I'm so happy that you decided to come on, and I really can't thank you enough because like I said, I've been following you for months now, and we've been connected for months on LinkedIn, and just the power of social media is just something else. And just thanks so much for your time and coming on. It's, every time I have a guest on, I feel like I just do a good job of bringing on high quality, high caliber people. And I think I hit the mark having you on. So thank you so much for your time. I can't thank you enough,
Absolutely.
really.
If I may interject, Denny, you're definitely tapping into what's calling at you. And this is one of the things that I share with men and women out there, that what you want to do as a leader is listen to what's calling at you, not what's clawing at you. And
Wow.
oftentimes, if there's something that's clawing at us, it's the freaking ego, brother. And our ego is not our amigo. So depending on the situation, you got to say, like, the ego helped me in the Marine Corps be assertive, and be very competitive. Like, the ego's a good thing, but sometimes it doesn't serve us. So know when your ego is not your amigo. And I would say that's what you did, throughout when you experienced that part of your growth. You realized, I'm not that old person anymore. Now I'm a better person, because you were letting go of that ego. It wasn't
Yeah.
manipulating your way forward. And this is what we must constantly do, is like really trust ourselves. And that sexy confidence, Danny. Learn to trust yourself. That sexy confidence, right? To listen to what is calling at me. This my gut. That's our gut intuition. We have to trust it. It's our moral compass that's guiding us forward. So it was an absolute honor to be here today.
Yeah, no, thank you so much. And I know that, some of our listeners, when I, do a little bit of advertising or whatever and put stuff out for this podcast, they might want to work with you. I know I am probably going to want to work with you, definitely going to want to work with you and stay connected for sure. I'm really grateful for this friendship now. So if people want to do that, where can they find you?
My website, Denny, is sandragonzalez.com, and Gonzalez is spelled with two Z's. But on my website, they can get all the information they need. Again, I offer a complimentary assessment to help you see what you might not be seeing. And, we always need that external perspective to guide us or just point us in the right direction. And I'm a friend. I'm here to serve, and that is available on my website, sandragonzalez.com. And if I may also add, I'm publishing my book this September, Denny. So I'm really excited about that.
Congratulations. That's great. That's great. So you said September you're releasing your book?
Yes.
Good for you. Good for you. I'm writing one, hopefully, to be released maybe next year this time. So might have to pick your brain on a lot of things.
We're here.
But that's great.
United we stand, brother.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Again, thanks so much. I can't thank you enough for your time. This has been one of my favorite episodes, and I'm not just saying that. I mean it. So thank you so much.
You're going to have to bring me back.
Absolutely. Absolutely. For sure. We'd love to have you back. I can't wait to have you back, and definitely will. So thanks again. I appreciate it.
Thank you.